Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the NHS Health Careers YouTube Live today on this Wednesday. It's a big day for the NHS. The NHS is 75 years old today, 3/4 of a century. So it's a big one, and so we wanted to make sure we celebrated and gave you an opportunity to find out more about roles in the NHS, and also celebrated two wonderful NHS staff that we're really pleased to have joining us for this event today, and they're going to introduce themselves in a minute. So my name is Abby. I'm from the NHS Health Careers team, and we're going to be with you for about half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that. Depends how many questions you've got, to be honest. And you're going to be hearing from our lovely guests, and you're going to have the opportunity to ask them questions. So please make sure that you start putting your questions into the chat, and then we can make sure that we get through as many of them as we can. So some of them you'll get a written response in the chat, but hopefully you'll have some for our guests as well, and we can make sure that we hear the answers straight from them. So hopefully you will get inspired by what you hear in the next half an hour or so, and you'll get some signposts so that you can go away, you can find out more, and you can take action towards that next step, whether that's you just doing a little bit more digging and exploration of what you might want to do, or whether you want to go away and apply for a job or an apprenticeship or a course. But we hope that this is a really exciting event for you and gives you lots of inspiration and information. Okay, so that is enough from me. So I would like to ask our guests to introduce themselves. So Ima, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi everyone, so my name is Ima. I work as a project and data analyst assistant in the NHS. I work at an organization called the Cheshire and Merseyside Cancer Alliance, and I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm looking forward to engaging with you and answering any questions you might have about the NHS or about my role. So yeah, thank you for inviting me here today.
Oh, thanks, Simon. No, thank you to you and to you, Chris, for giving up your time to do this. It's brilliant. Okay, Chris.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Chris. I'm a psychological wellbeing practitioner with NHS West Sussex Talking Therapies. That's just a really fancy way of saying I support people who have common mental health difficulties by delivering therapy to them. And I'm really pleased to meet you all today and answer any questions that you may have.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. And yeah, I do really want to reiterate that we are really grateful that you both gave up your time, because these events wouldn't be what they are if people like you weren't prepared to do that. So thank you. Okay, so Ima, I've got the first question for you. Since GCSEs or equivalent, what's your kind of career journey been?
Right, so I actually am an international student, so I did my GCSEs and A-levels abroad. Mostly all of my subjects were usually sciences or maths, so I did biology, chemistry and maths for my A-levels, and then I decided to do biomedical sciences at the University of Manchester, and that's when I went and came to the UK. So as part of my degree, I decided to do a placement year, which is something that some students decide to do between their second and third year, where they go and work for any company essentially just to get a bit of experience. And I came across this opportunity in the NHS in Liverpool, and I decided to take it, and that was really great. So even though my degree was a lot more focused on clinical stuff in terms of working in the lab and working as a biomedical scientist, I realized I didn't really want to work in a lab. So I was looking for something non-clinical, and then I came across something that I thought, you know what, it sounds exciting, let me try this out. So it was a project management and data analytics role, and I applied, I got the placement, and I've been working with them for about 2 years now, and it's been incredible, because I've got to do not just working in a non-clinical environment, but I've worked in so many different types of roles and jobs and all sorts of things. So it's been a great exposure to the NHS and even the wider public sector. And this year I will be graduating. Actually, next week I'll be graduating. So it has been really great. It's given me a great starting point as a fresh graduate.
Brilliant, and congratulations on your graduation next week. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to hear how sometimes you can set off on one path thinking, yep, this is what I want to do, and then other opportunities come up, and actually it's really important to realise, to work out what you don't want to do, as well as the things that you are interested in, isn't it? What is it that you enjoy about the project management and the data analysis?
So I think I realized that I like doing lots of different things, and I love that with this role, it gives me the variety to work in, with different teams on different projects, and that's why my typical day is never the same. It's I obviously have certain responsibilities, for example, updating certain spreadsheets or reporting to my manager, etc. But I feel like from time to time I'm working on different projects with different people, internal and external to my organization, which is great exposure as a young person, I think. And I really enjoyed that because I've learned so much about myself as well, what my strengths and weaknesses are, and have attained a lot of transferable skills that I can use within my roles, in the future, whether at another organization. So I think that's been really, really great. Yeah.
Thank you. So you have just mentioned that you don't really have a typical day as such, but could you give us an example of what a day might be like, some of the typical activities that you do? You mentioned a couple, but
so one of the things that I was responsible for was setting up certain spreadsheets. So as part of my data analysis role, I used to work with the Endoscopy Recovery Network, which was a network set up after the pandemic to help the NHS deal with backlogs within the endoscopy service. And we were trying to figure out where the gaps were within the service and how we can reduce the waiting times for patients. And for that, we would get, daily or weekly reports, which I would put into a spreadsheet and then do some analysis, do a bit of Excel and Power BI. So it wasn't so complicated. When people hear data analysis, they think, oh, well, it's too technical. But I think my role was more high-level data, and I was looking at where we could sort of improve in terms of efficiency. How can we cut time off in certain services so that we can, help the staff, but also how can they see more patients in the same amount of time, basically. So that was one of my data analysis role. Whereas for my project management, that was also very broad. I would be working with doctors or GPs sometimes to organize meetings. So I would help them take minutes, and I was also involved in a lot of educational event organization. So there's a lot that goes on when it comes to event planning as well, and it's stressful, but I really enjoyed it because it keeps you really busy, and So I think the typical day would really vary depending on what's coming up, but this is what I normally worked on.
Right, thank you. So it sounds really varied, and that's clearly one of the things that you like about the role.
Yeah,
right,
for sure.
Thanks, Jaime. We'll be back with you in a second. Chris, if I could come to you now. So you've got quite a long job title there, haven't you? Why did you choose a career as a psychological wellbeing practitioner?
Well, it wasn't my first route, actually. I was one of those people who was a little bit unsure of what to do. I kind of fell into business after doing GCSEs and getting kind of 3 A's, 5 B's and a C, by no means an all A-star student. I kind of did some A-levels, and I just kind of fell into business as that's what my family had done. I got a bit of experience while I was doing business there of helping in charities and doing some mentoring and coaching work. And what I really found out is that I enjoyed working with people. That was the main thing, and helping people. So I took that to an extreme, and I went straight to social work next. And I became a social worker. I was doing a master's in social work. And that was a really great experience. I learned a lot of skills, worked with some amazing people. But one of the challenges with social work for me was it was a high amount of risk management with a kind of risk monitoring rather than that focus on recovery work. And then that's really what led me to therapy, because I was really lucky as a social worker to get some experiences of therapy. And I knew that that was just for me. And there were so many ways into the NHS with that kind of background to go there, that I kind of took the opportunity, took the plunge, made the change. And I haven't really looked back, to be honest. It's been an amazing experience. Working with patients on their recovery is really powerful. It's really meaningful work. And you come home feeling like you've achieved something each day, which is always a nice feeling.
Thank you. What was the how long was the training you had to do? What was it like to become a PWP, as we'll call it from now on, because it's a bit quicker, isn't it?
Absolutely, rolls off the tongue a lot nicer. Basically the training's really great. It's about a year long in total. You'll do some days kind of with a course kind of structured at a university, learning, which is fantastic. You won't go in there without feeling like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? You'll have role played sessions beforehand with your classmates. You'll have got that clinical kind of experience in those role plays, which is really useful to then bring to the patient work as well. So you kind of have a year developing your skills, building up your caseload until it feels manageable. And one of the really great things I appreciate about the NHS actually is they kind of make that a bit individual to each person's needs. So for example, me, I've got a few additional needs. So for example, like dyslexia, they put in loads of support in place in order to make sure that it was at the right pace for me as well. So that was really, really important. So it was a really good training year, lasted a year. And then also, even after that year, you still get a nice bit of time to embed before you go onto a full caseload too. So it's very, very supportive environment.
Excellent, thank you. That's really good to hear about the sort of the adaptations and things that can be made, because I know that's something some people really worry about, don't they, when they're coming into the workplace or to do training. So it's about speaking up, isn't it, and asking and seeing what can be put in place. Great, thanks, Chris. So what transferable skills do you feel were the main ones you brought with you from your previous experience, either, you know, any part of your previous experience really?
I think number one is kind of communication skills and just having that empathy. And I wouldn't want to say that just comes from almost work experience. That might come from life experience. And that's something I really want to encourage. There's lots of my colleagues who kind of had limited of that from the kind of clinical experience when they applied to become a PWP, but had loads of that life experience. And that was actually really valued. And one of the great things about the interview process is it gives you that opportunity to showcase those skills as well. So I think anyone who's got those strong communication skills, high levels of empathy, really important, but also someone who's quite emotionally resilient. I think one of the challenging parts of the life is sometimes we're working with people in crisis, and that can be quite challenging. So if you have that kind of resilience and those skills, that ability to turn the laptop off as hard as it is at 5 p.m. and go to the gym or the walk or whatever that looks like for you, then those are kind of really great tools to have before you embark in a career, I think. So keep you really enjoying the job and giving your best each day.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. Ima, if I can just come back to you for a minute. So I've realised that we've been using the terms clinical and non-clinical, and I should at the beginning have sort of explained to people what that means. So when we're talking about clinical roles, we tend to be talking about the ones where you've got direct caregiving to patients, whether that's through a therapy like Chris is delivering, or very much hands-on care. Non-clinical would be ones where you might still speak to patients at times, but you're not in a caregiving role. It's in all sorts of roles, whether that's management, finance, administration, the sort of role that Ima does, estates, all sorts of roles. We haven't got time, unfortunately, this evening to go through the many roles in the NHS, but just wanted to quickly clarify that. So connection between what you do and patients.
No, certainly. So a lot of the projects that I work on are actually personalized care and how to improve patient experience. And we've run quite a lot of campaigns because I work for the Cancer Alliance. One of our roles and our job is to raise awareness about different types of cancers, but also to understand a patient's cancer treatment journey from the beginning to the end. And I got involved in some of those campaigns, which was very interesting. One of them to do with health inequalities, and this was where I went to certain hospitals, and I actually spoke to patients and listened to their cancer treatment journey, which I honestly found so interesting because you kind of get real-time feedback, especially when you're in non-clinical role and all you're looking at is a bunch of spreadsheets or documents, and you don't really know how that connects. But actually speaking to the patients and seeing the impact that you're having, I felt really inspired by that. So for sure, even in my data analysis role, we work with about 9 to 10 different trusts across an area. So you are, as part of that team, I do feel like I am making an impact by improving services for these patients, by having to, making it more convenient for them, and also helping doctors and nurses because they're also quite overworked sometimes. So I really, our goal is to improve patient care, whether we're facing them directly or we're doing it indirectly through, through some data analysis or through different projects that look at it, optimizing different services. So for sure, I think it really does make me feel like I have a connection with patients, but at the same time, I get to do something that I really enjoy. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, because direct patient care isn't for everyone, and that's absolutely fine. And there are plenty of roles where you don't need to do that, but you can still feel that, as you've used that term, kind of making a difference and making an impact to people at the end of the day, which is great. Thanks, Ima. Chris, you may have a similar answer to Ima in that you haven't got a typical day, but again, if you could talk us through what a day might look like for you, please, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it varies, of course.
We've just I was just going to say we've just lost
guys.
us. That's all right.
Is that okay now?
Business. Yep.
It wouldn't be alive if we didn't have a technical error with it.
Exactly.
So no problem. So yeah, I'd love to. So my days usually start off with an assessment. So this is where I might call a patient up and we'll explore their current symptoms. It'll be the patient's first time kind of speaking to someone from the service. So it's a great opportunity for them to share for the first time. That's an incredibly powerful moment for the patient as well. And that can be very therapeutic in itself. That might take about an hour to complete that assessment, 45 minutes to an hour. And then we get some time to take that to supervision as well. So you get to discuss that with a supervisor, talk about a treatment plan, start to think of solutions, start to think what would be best for this individual patient's needs. And I think that's lovely because our supervisors are so supportive that they give you that confidence in your own decision making, but at the same time are there to give you those little nuggets which you really need in that kind of work. So we'll start with maybe an assessment, then maybe I'll have some treatments with patients as well. So this is where we're providing kind of routine care to that patient to treat certain conditions. So that could be maybe offering techniques for worry management for people struggling with anxiety. It could be promoting someone to achieve their goals with what we call behavioural activation, but maybe working with depression. Or it could be something like working with a patient with phobias, and slowly introducing the thing they're a bit afraid of in a more comfortable way. And that's incredibly rewarding, actually seeing someone overcome their fears. So very mixed, but in the midst of that is a lot of kind of educational workshops we have, whether that's learning about a new condition, learning about working with trauma. We constantly have kind of new speakers come in, teaching us more, giving their expertise and really sharing that knowledge, which is really lovely too.
Brilliant, thank you. So the training doesn't stop at the end of that training year. There's learning going on.
There's always so much to do, actually, so much learning and so much chances for progression, really, whether that's kind of with your own goals, having an improvement project yourself, or whether you want to be a champion to represent the LGBTQ plus community, for example. There's so many ways for you to explore your interests with the job and kind of share that knowledge that you have and that passion. So, yeah, constantly learning from one another. And I think that's the great thing about the NHS. It attracts so many talented people.
Brilliant, thank you, Chris. Do you always do your therapy one-on-one with a patient, or are you sometimes working with groups?
That's a great question, and it really varies. So I offer group support. We offer one-to-one support, and that can be over the phone. It might be Microsoft Teams. It might be face-to-face. So we just try to be as accessible as possible, really. For some patients, they even have just typed therapy through one of our services. So what we try to do is we look at the individual patient. We say, what is in their needs? What do they want, really? And listen to them. And we try to work with what we've got from that. But luckily, there's quite flexible support on offer.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chris. Ima, if I could come back to you, and it might, I don't know how far down this sort of thinking you've got, but have you got ideas about how your career might progress in the future, or are you just going to take opportunities as they come up?
I think one of the things that I've enjoyed in my, 2 years here in the NHS is project management, just because you've got so many options. And I would agree with Chris that the progression it's great. So you really get to explore your interest in whatever area you think you might be better in. So I think for me right now, I might be going more towards a project management pathway. Not long term, I'm not sure. I'm still like trying to figure things out. But I do think as a fresh graduate, it has put me in a very good position and it's given me more exposure than I would have if I had just graduated like everybody else. So for sure. And the other thing I would say is in the NHS, you don't have to have a specific background. So I come from a biomedical sciences background, but I've had other students working with me that did economics or did business or history. And it's really great because you've got all these people from different backgrounds coming together to try and make things better for the patients. I think we all have a common goal, and that is to improve patient care. And that's the thing that I really like about working in the NHS is that no matter where you come from, you have the same goals, you have the same priorities. So I do think going forwards, I might be looking at more for project management. Long term, I'm still not sure. But it's great because there are, amazing like learning and development opportunities. So as part of my placement, I got to do a Prince 2 course or qualification, which is a specialized qualification for project management. And that's been really great. And I think I will do some of these other qualifications as well, just to support with my role going forwards. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm sure what you've just said will be reassuring for some of the people watching, because I think when you're kind of thinking about leaving school or college and what you might want to do next, sometimes you feel like you've got to have it all figured out, and you don't have to, do you? You can, I mean, both of you are great examples of how you've tried one thing and thought, actually, not quite sure about this, but this might be more my thing. And you don't have to have a career for life anymore. There is so much more flexibility and an ability to move around. So if you are watching and thinking, but I haven't got a plan, it doesn't matter. You just think about that, you just explore options and just sort of think about the next thing you might want to do, and just see where it takes you. Great. Ima, I just very quickly wanted to ask you, and you have touched on this a little bit already, what other members of staff, either clinical or non-clinical, do you work with in your kind of everyday work?
So I certainly work with other project managers, so senior project managers. When I'm doing more data-related projects, I also work with some of the analysts, so the performance analyst, only because I'm still quite new in the role, not very experienced. So, especially when I started, they were there to support me and help me guide me through the different projects. And so I do work with these people, but I also work with doctors and clinical staff like nurses or GPs. And I help them run sessions or team meetings. So we have something called clinical quality groups that we have every other month. And that's basically a way to get all the clinical staff together to have discussions about the issues happening across different services. And I help organize these and also sometimes host them. So facilitate them. So it's been really great because I've worked with different specialities, for example, breast cancer surgeons, but also worked with GPs within Cheshire, Merseyside, and also pathologists within different in the Northwest. So it really varies, but over time depends on which project I'm placed in and what responsibilities I've been given. So I do get to work with both non-clinical and clinical staff.
Yeah.
Because I think a part of my role is, yes, we've found these insights from data, but they need to be implemented within the service, and we need both parties, the doctors or the clinical staff, to also understand in order for a solution to work. So
Absolutely.
it really needs to,
yeah, the whole team on board.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Ima. Chris, so we know from kind of when we're at events and things like this and talking to young people that there is a lot of interest in working within mental health or the psychological professions. What would you say to someone sort of considering it?
I'd say it's an amazing opportunity, and I think we all know those kind of people in our lives where we think, oh, you'll be really good in this kind of field. You know, you're one of those helping people, and I think that personality type really comes across. So I think, you know, just go for it. One of the number one tips I'd give people is just don't undersell your experience. You know, so many people come up to me and say, oh, I haven't done, you know, maybe I need to do this next, maybe I need to do this next. But when you explore with them, actually, they've maybe volunteered a few events, they've actually spoken with people, and actually those are the skills that people are looking for. That's the skills which make you employable, and they're skills which are so valuable as well. So I'd say really don't minimize your achievements, and wherever possible, do explore opportunities to get those skills. You know, go and volunteer if you can. Look at organizations like the Samaritans, for example, do some free work with them and support them. That will give you not just the skills you need, but also just that experience of whether you like it or not. I think that's so important, and that's all part of the journey. Try things out, see how you feel about it, and that's how kind of the careers go. I would have never imagined I'd end up where I am today a number of years ago, but I did that through many kind of ups and downs along the way. So yeah, it's all part of that experience, really. So I think that would be my top tip, is just don't undersell your experience and just look for any opportunities you can.
Great advice. Thank you very much, Chris. Ima, as we've said, we're celebrating the 75th birthday, anniversary, whatever you want to call it, of the NHS today. What are your sort of hopes for the future NHS and its workforce?
I think one of the things that the workforce is struggling with right now is there's just limited staff, and we're trying to improve services, but either the staff's overworked or there's already too much going on. And I really hope that with new people coming in, bringing in fresh ideas, we could potentially, improve patient care and help meet our targets for the future. And I think, just following on from what Chris said, in order to be successful as a whole NHS, you really have to be bringing in people that are dedicated and are just willing to put in the work and work collaboratively. And I think that's sort of the key thing to keep in mind when going forwards in terms of the future for the NHS. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Ima. Chris, anything you want to add to that? And it's fine if you haven't, but any other thoughts?
No, I think I totally agree. It's about just making the service as efficient as we can. Yeah. And we know there are challenges. We know that's really difficult. But I think with the ambitious workforce that we have and the opportunities for development we have, even from kind of my level, which is quite low down to further up, is really good. And I think it's going to move us in that right direction.
Great stuff. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to take questions from the audience. So thank you so much, Chris and Ima, for everything you've shared so far. And I know it will have inspired people and given people things to go away and think about. So I am just going to see what we've got coming in. So excuse me, everyone, looking at my phone because this is how I'm being sent the questions from the YouTube. Okay, so question for you, Ima. What IT career opportunities are there in the NHS? Good question, whoever submitted that one.
Yeah, well, there are lots. I think there's a whole, so one thing that you really need to understand, and I understood that as well, is the NHS is made up of many different organizations, and they're they really vary. I didn't really realize how vast the different types of organizations you'll have, but there's the NHS Digital, and I know they do a lot of, they basically handle a lot of digital related projects, but also within the Cancer Alliance that I work in, we've got a whole department just dedicated to IT, and their job is to ensure that everything runs smoothly in terms of security, data protection, because it's very essential when it comes to patients and dealing with patient data. So data protection is a big, I would say cybersecurity is a big growing field within the NHS that I'd highly recommend anyone looking to go into the IT sector just to look into that, because there's lots of opportunities in that area.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's how I tend to think about the NHS is it's like any other huge organisation in that you need all the infrastructure that goes with a huge organisation, don't you? And
sure.
and you know, you mentioned cybersecurity. People don't often think about the NHS as being an organisation that would employ cybersecurity professionals, but we need them. And as you say, there's a lot of sensitive patient data, and so yeah, great, thank you. Okay, so we've got a question about biomedical scientist jobs, actually. So Ima, this might be one for you and I to kind of tackle together. So someone said, any tips on getting a biomedical scientist job in the NHS? So I know this can be challenging, particularly getting the sort of trainee biomedical scientist posts. Have you got any tips on getting there?
So again, this is more of a clinical route, but I do know that there's the scientist training program that a lot of biomedical graduates tend to go for, which is quite competitive. But one way you could do is do a placement year between your second and third year at any lab within your area or abroad. And I think adding that experience really does help you stand out as a candidate, because you know, it really just gives you the exposure to how it's like working in a lab. And definitely, if you're looking to go into the biomedical sciences route, make sure your degree is accredited, you have all the appropriate qualifications that you need as a biomedical scientist. And I know there are different exams or things that you can take. I'm not entirely sure, but you can definitely look them up on the NHS website in terms of how you can be qualified to work in the NHS as a biomedical scientist.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And sometimes a sort of medical laboratory assistant route is a good route as
definitely.
well, isn't it? To do that first. So
for sure, I think the scientist training program is great because they really do. You know, I think you get to do qualifications alongside it as well, which is great. I think it's the masters. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and you get paid while you're doing it as well, which is even better.
For sure, yeah.
Great, thanks, Ima. Okay, Chris, got one for you. What are my options in the NHS with a psychology degree?
I think you've got quite a lot of options. The option I took was obviously the psychological wellbeing practitioner route, but depending on your experience, you might want to go in even higher than that if you wanted to. For example, if you've got certain degrees, you can go in and start as a CBT therapist if you have the right experience. So that's similar to what I'm doing at the moment, but it's including a few extra conditions as well, things like working with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD as it's commonly known. So that is another route which I would really say can do it, but there's loads, to be honest. I probably don't know them all myself. I'm more really directed in the therapy area, but there'd be many.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. And so if whoever's asked that question, make sure hopefully the link's gone into the chat, but if you go onto the Health Careers website under Explore Roles, look at the psychological professions page, and you'll see there are many other practitioner type roles similar to Chris's, but working in different settings with different client groups, and then there are the sort of the even more highly qualified roles, and you know, you can look at clinical psychologists, that sort of thing as well. The other thing I just wanted to mention here actually is that Chris, the role that you're doing, you don't have to have a degree in order to do the training, do you?
No, that's right. Actually, I shared my degree with some fantastic apprentices as well. And actually, just because they were in an apprenticeship route, they did the exact same thing as we did. So it's actually life experience really matters. Any work experience along the way as well. We want the right people rather than just the right qualifications. So, you know, that's always a fantastic opportunity. I'd encourage anyone to give it a go if they're curious, really.
Thank you. Okay, right. Someone else has asked tips on getting a healthcare assistant job for future training as a nurse or paramedic. So I'll pick this one up. So there are lots of opportunities here, and healthcare assistant or healthcare support worker, as it's sometimes known, is a really, really great entry point. And you can come in either to do that as a job or as an apprenticeship. So you can do a healthcare support worker apprenticeship at level 2, which is equivalent to GCSEs, or even at level 3, which is equivalent to A levels. That potentially you could lead on to do the nursing associate apprenticeship, which is level 5, a foundation degree, and then a shortened registered nurse degree apprenticeship, which would then mean once you've successfully completed that, becoming a registered nurse. Or if you're looking down the paramedic route, again, sort of coming in perhaps as an emergency care assistant. I mean, getting a healthcare support worker apprenticeship in any setting is a great start, whatever you want to end up doing, to be honest. But work in the ambulance service as an emergency care assistant, and then most ambulance service trusts have really clear kind of progression pathways that you can follow, and they are I think now all of them, or nearly all of them, are offering the degree apprenticeship as well in paramedicine to existing members of staff. So getting a foot in the door, getting a support worker role is an absolutely brilliant way to start. You know, nursing and paramedics, we need more of them, as well as the birthday of the NHS this week. Just at the end of last week, the long-term NHS workforce plan was published. You might have seen stuff about it in the media, and it's clear we need more of pretty much every role, and certainly nurses. You know, the number of opportunities for nurse training, and whether that be through a full-time university degree or an apprenticeship, are only going to be growing over the next few years. So yes, get onto our website, the Health Careers website. You can sign up for more information about becoming these roles. We'll receive some emails that will kind of walk you through the process a little bit more. So do have a look at that. Tips on getting an entry-level role in the first place. There are no set entry requirements for these roles often. So even if you haven't got Maths and English GCSEs, you might be able to be supported by your employer to get what's called your functional skills, which is equivalent to GCSE Maths and English. So don't be put off if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm never going to get a degree. I haven't got A levels. I haven't got this. I haven't got that. Don't let it put you off. There'll be a way in. So you would search for those jobs on the NHS jobs website. So you can do a search for healthcare assistant or healthcare support worker, and see what's out there, and then look at the person specification, because that's where it sets out what that employer is looking for in terms of your experience, your skills, and any qualifications they might want. But an important kind of tip here as well is, even if you're looking at a job vacancy and thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure I meet the person specification here, phone up the named contact. There'll be a named contact on every single job advert on the NHS jobs website. Have a chat with them, have an informal conversation. You can do that before or after you've applied, and just find out more about the job and tell them more about yourself. Arrange an informal visit if you can, as well. So I hope that helps. Okay, Ima, this is probably another one for you, actually, and you may have answered this person's question already, but let's see if there's anything else that springs to mind. Opportunities for people with an admin and data entry background.
I think there's quite a lot, especially even within our organization, the one that I work in right now. They're expanding as well. So I think admin support is key to making sure everything runs smoothly. And you know, you can, if you've got any minute taking experience, or if you've got any experience working with spreadsheets, then I would highly encourage you to apply for any band 4 roles, or you can get band 5 as well. And then there the project management office roles. They're also quite good. You don't need to have any specific experience, but if you've got any project management related qualifications, they would be sort of a bonus. But yeah, I think there's lots. If you just search up admin assistant or project assistant or data assistant, you'll find something. But I do realize even within the trust that I work in, which is the Clatterbridge Cancer Centre, there's lots of vacancies. You just have to keep an eye out on the NHS jobs website, because I think that's quite useful. Yeah.
That's a really good tip. And actually also what you mentioned about trying different search terms, that's really important as well, because it might surface different things. Chris, you probably come across people who do data entry and admin roles as well in what you do, don't you?
Oh, they're the heartbeat of our team, the admin. They're actually what keeps the business ticking, really. It's just fantastic. They're amazing. And you know, they actually get to talk to patients. Actually, earlier on, I said I'm the first person who speaks to the patient in the assessment. Probably not true. It's our amazing admin team who speaks to them first, probably. So there is that part as well. Every single team relies on admin. They're a massive part of the NHS and keeping us running. So there'll be lots and lots of different roles.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, Ima, any tips for someone who was unsuccessful with an application to a data technician apprenticeship?
I think it depends the kind of thing, how technical you're wanting it to be. But if you can get any sort of experience in terms of, there's lots of online courses that you can do for free. I did a couple on Udemy. It's a website, I can put the link in the chat, and they tend to do quite a lot on Excel or Power BI. I think those are quite useful, and they've helped me in my role as well. Yourself by taking one of these free courses, take some time out. That gives you the experience, but also the confidence to go ahead and apply for more roles. Again, I would also recommend going broad. So if it's possible for you, then apply to more locations. That just makes your chances of getting a role better. But also, don't give up. I think there's lots of support once you get the role. You just have to try and get your foot in the door.
Yeah, that's such an important message. So whoever asked that question, please don't be disheartened, because there are knockbacks on the way sometimes, but keep trying. See if you can get feedback as well. If you got to interview stage and didn't get over the line there, get in touch with that named contact, see if you can get some feedback. And another tip actually and this goes for any role in the NHS, is to find out more about the values from the NHS constitution. So it's things like working together for patients, compassion, respect and dignity. Come to your interviews, write your applications armed with evidence of how you understand and live those values, because one of you mentioned earlier, I can't remember which one of you it was, but about how it's about this, it's not just about your qualifications, it's about who you are as a person. So that really does matter. But yes, keep going, keep looking, keep applying for things, and really hope you find something soon. Okay, so we've got one more question, and Chris, I think you might be able to help out here. So support time and recovery workers, have you come across those at all?
I haven't myself, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm not too sure on that role particularly.
That's absolutely fine, and I must admit, actually, I don't know a huge amount about it either, but tips for applying for it. I mean, I think, to be honest, a lot of what we've been saying already will apply. So values, do your research. If you can find someone who does that role and is happy to have a chat to you about it, about what they find challenging, what they find rewarding, what a typical day looks like, just do as much information gathering as you can. If you can shadow someone, do that. I know that's not always possible, but just read up as much as you can about it. And as I said, when you see a vacancy, get in touch with that named contact, have a conversation about what the role entails, so that you really understand from both the job description, from talking to people, from your own research, you really understand what it is you're doing, and what your priorities are going to be in that role, and what skills you're going to need for that role. So again, best of luck to you applying for that. Okay. That has been a really great bunch of questions, so thank you all so much, and it's really nice because there's been something for Ima, something for Chris as well, so that's been really good. Chris and Ima, thank you so much for giving up your time this evening, because I know you're both busy people. You've stayed after work time to do this. I know that you're going to have inspired people, and that there'll be little snippets of things that you've said that will stick in people's heads as they go on and kind of think about what they might want to do next. So thank you so much for being part of this event today. And thank you all for joining us. We really hope it's been helpful, inspiring, has given you things to kind of get excited about and go away and find out more about. So I'm sure lots of links have gone in the chat, but get onto the Health Careers website. If you're not sure what you want to do, have a go at the careers quiz, see what comes up, look into the different roles. If you're actually at the point of wanting to look for a job or an apprenticeship, then start to look on the NHS jobs website and see what you can find there. But thank you so much for joining us on this special birthday event. We've got our contact centre as well, so if you think of more questions after today, never fear, you can get in touch with our contact centre, and again, I'm sure those details have gone into the chat. Thank you for joining us, and have a really lovely rest of your Wednesday evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.